Welcome back to another episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamone, and I'm an acceptance coach who helps people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self acceptance and step into their personal power. This podcast is your dedicated space for healing, growth, and transformation. Each episode shares insightful and inspirational stories, along with practical tools and actionable insights that can help guide you along your healing journey. Today, I have a special guest with us. Her name is Paula Hill. She's a grief coach and advocate after losing her middle child and oldest son, Austin, on August 12th of 2022 in a brutal motorcycle accident. Her community went from tons to none. She created a Zoom community group for bereaved parents and a foundation in honor of Austin for those that wanted to walk with them on this journey. She has recorded a handful of podcast episodes over the last year, so she's been out there sharing Austin's story. She's a devoted wife, mother, and compassionate advocate for those grieving in deep pain of grief. She's been married to 23 years to her husband, Brian, who's a proud veteran. And Paula's life has been shaped by love, loss, and resilience to transform heartache into hope for others. Um, Paula, I want to give you some room today on the show to share with us a little bit about Austin's story. When you and I first met a couple months ago, I found your story very moving, and for those of you guys listening, by the way, Paula has a picture of Austin behind her on the Zoom, and he's a real just thoroughbred, true Texan guy. That's what I love about him, and so. I'm going to let Paula share a little bit about her grief story and tell you guys a little bit more about Austin.
Yeah, the crazy thing is he was born in Kansas while we
Oh,
were
that's
stationed
right.
in Kansas. But when we moved here, he was middle school, so he was probably 10. So his roots were here in Texas. And true country boy, true proud American, um, born into a military family on July 30th of 1997 in Fort Riley, Kansas. Born blue and not breathing, so he was already a rebel child from the get-go. He came back with resilience. At 3 weeks old, he wound up hospitalized with kidney failure. We were there for about a week and a half, got that under control. And then just from there, he just set that tone for the rest of his life where that kid was the underdog, middle child to myself. I have three other children. My daughter is 31. My youngest son is now 25. And he was different. He loved music, he loved tennis, he loved um odd things that my other two did not. So understanding him as a child and growing up was a little difficult for me, just because I never found the things that he liked interesting, but yet I did not want to keep him feeling like an outcast. So he's a self-taught artist. He drew. When he passed away, he was a very well-known tattoo artist in the area, and I hold some of his art on my body today, which I am so lucky to have. Part of him goes with me everywhere. And so throughout life, was just trying to figure out who he was and where he can be accepted. And with that came some struggles of mental health, growing up in high school and um, middle school is where it started. High school was the biggest struggle. Um, but he always pushed through. My biggest concern was, his depression got so bad. I was naive to mental health at the time. I had my own issues, my own childhood traumas that I had never worked on, didn't realize how important it was to acknowledge it. In turn, you know, I took him to a doctor and we put him on medication, but not all the time is that the answer to everything. And so there were times where, opening up that garage door was a little scary for me, or wondering if I'm going to get that phone call from a police officer because he's been arrested for reckless, behaviors or whatever. He was a go-getter. He did what he wanted to do. He made his own rules. And that's what I loved about him is he was so free flowing, but in a way, um I say free flowing. He loved doing whatever he wanted to do, even though behind the scenes there was anxiety and there was the depression. And Man, as he started to grow older and graduate high school, this kid lived by the seat of his pants. We didn't even know he was going to graduate high school until 2 days before graduation. And I couldn't help but just shake my head, like, son, what are you thinking? But this is who he was. He loved music. He taught himself how to play guitar, drums. He played a little piano, but he wasn't like in love with that as much as he was the guitar and the drums. And so he had a band in high school. He was just that kid that was going to explore everything that he possibly could. So moving on after graduation, he had multiple jobs. He lived at home. I just watched him flourish from a little boy into a young man. And it was beautiful. Um, but then he met a girl. And when he met her, he did not tell us that she was pregnant because he was afraid that I would be judgmental or, accuse it of being his child. And they hadn't even been dating very long. And so when he finally told me because he wanted to move in with her and take the responsibilities on, he's like, Mom, I need to tell you something. And he told me she was 10 weeks pregnant and that he wants to be responsible and all of this. And I said, why would you think that I am going to be mad at that? Your dad, which is my husband of 23 years, Brian, raised my kids. He came into our life when I was, excuse me, going through a divorce. My daughter was 7, Austin was 4, and my youngest son was 15 months old. And so that's all they knew was Brian as dad. So I loved that he watched my husband and I raise them and how my husband had the genuine love for them, um that he can take on that responsibility himself. And so I just told him how proud I was, and they wound up married in September of 2020. And he created a life for himself. And at the point of his passing, he was at his highest point. He was at an amazing job driving a truck for a concrete company. He was exploring different avenues of education for his daughter so she wouldn't have to go to public school. He was the sole provider for the three of them, living with her family, of course, but that was fine with me. Like, I thought that if it worked, great, because society is so expensive nowadays. And so, through all of this, at the time that he was doing this job, I actually had went to celebrate recovery. My husband and I have a reconciled marriage, and we were asked by the elders of our church to attend what was known at the time as a pilot program for our church called Celebrate Recovery. And for me, I knew it as an addiction program. And they were like, no, 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 everybody has all hurts, habits, and hangups. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll check it out. And I fell in love with the feeling of working through my traumas. And I was in a 12-step program at the time, working on trauma from my childhood. And I was a mom at 17. I was a mom of 3 by the time I was 23. My mom was never in my life. She was in and out. I was not a priority. Um, and I'll just say that's my perspective. Her perspective's different, and that's okay. But I had a lot of trauma. I had never dealt with it, never realized how it affected my characteristics in life. And through this program, I was learning these things. And I identified in all 3 of my children. I poured myself into them and not into myself. And while doing this program, I realized that while I didn't want to damage them, I did damage them because I was that helicopter mom that did everything for them. And they didn't get to learn life skills because I took care of it for them. And so I was on probably step 7, where I had to make my amends. And I made it with each child. And it was very powerful to me when God spoke to me and said, do not say I'm sorry. And I didn't understand that. And I'll fast forward into that later. He said, you need to tell them you apologize. And so I did. I told them I apologized for whatever it was that damaged them in those years, and you know, to please forgive me, and if they didn't, I understood. I did my part. I had to leave it in their hands. When I had this conversation with Austin, I was really taken back at his response. I will say this child, my child, young adult child, was very old soul because his response to me was, Mom, stop apologizing. You did everything you could with what you had. And if you didn't do what you did, I wouldn't be the man that I am today. And it
That's
just took,
powerful.
yeah, it just took my breath away. I was like, wow, knowing that I hurt you and how I hurt you, and you still respond with such grace and love. Like that was just beautiful to me. And so in this process, I was praying to God because at this point I was becoming an empty nester. All three of my children were leaving the nest if they hadn't already. And who am I? Because now I can't identify in the children that are no longer under my roof and, you know, can't control anything. And I said, God, what is my purpose? Because I don't feel like I have one. And so through the weeks that he remained on this earth, he was over here having family time. He rode a motorcycle. He had a 2014 Street Glide, Harley Street Glide, and that was my biggest fear living with boys, knowing that they were adrenaline junkies. They all wanted motorcycles, including my daughter. I can't leave her out. She owns one today. Um, you know, wear your gear. We live in a big city. People don't pay attention. I need you to be, defensive when you drive. I preached all of these things every time I saw them. And when he was here, he said, Mom, I do everything in my power to make sure to make it home safe. I have a wife and child that I live for. And while I love that, I know that not all the time are we in control. There's people out there that aren't paying attention, or clearly, medical conditions, or there's all different reasons why accidents happen. And so I just wanted to reassure him that while I trust him in his driving, I still needed him to protect himself from any major hurt. And so, um, ironically, we had all these conversations that need to be had. And when I told him, hey, just be careful, ride defensive, he says, Mom, he said, if I die today, I die a happy man.
Whoa, that's
He said,
powerful.
I lived half of my life. He said, nowadays, men only live until about 60 years old. I'm almost 25. He said, this world's going to hell and I'm one person and I can't change it. I know where I'm going. Man, I had to sit in that. And then after he passed, I really had to sit in that because it's really part of what makes me keep going. And so, the Monday before he passed, he was at our home. He had a doctor's appointment, and for whatever reason, he was running late. Him and his wife were having an argument, and they wouldn't accept him into his appointment. But his truck was also not running correctly. And so he called me to come get the girls, his wife and his daughter. And when I got there, he said, You know what? I think if you can follow me to your house, I'll be okay. And I was like, Okay, no problem. And he gets here, and my husband had pulled in the driveway and he starts working on my son's truck. And the truck, something had to do with his brakes. And my son had to be at work that night at like midnight. So he was sitting on the couch trying to just relax while my husband worked on the vehicle, and his wife was out there helping my husband, and they come in and they're like, this is the problem, and they started bickering back and forth, and I will never forget it. Unfortunately, it's a vision that I still have on occasion, not as often. But he sat on the edge of my couch looking towards her and said, you are going to be the death of me. And I said, whoa, whoa, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus. We're not going there. And I said, you go with, my husband and take care of what you need to. And when she left, I had a conversation with them. And he knew. I mean, he knew words were powerful. He was in the Bible. He's the one that actually planted the seed in my husband and the rest of our family, and somebody else watered the seed. And so I said, Bubba, I said, You're okay. We're here. We got you. Don't feel like you have to take this on all by yourself." And so he took a breath and he was trying to rest. And when they left, we caught it on camera. And for whatever reason, within the first year, I lost the video, and it felt like I lost him all over again. We're not an affectionate family. Verbally, we told each other we love you and, whatnot. But because of my past traumas, I didn't know how to verbalize positivity very well. And on that day, God gave me the strength to literally hug him, not side hug him either. I hugged him and I gave him a kiss on the cheek and I said, I am so proud of you. You're doing what you need to do, and know that what you're doing, every step is a step forward. So keep going. And he perked up a little bit. And so he went and was doing his thing and he got in the truck and he laughed as he drove away. That was the last time I saw my son. That was the last time I talked to my son because of his hours,
Wow.
and he had a CDL license. So for me, I felt like it was important that I not call while he was at work. And that was the end of our conversation. That was the last time I saw him, the last time I hugged him, the last time anything. And
It's
Friday, he was my daughter lives 45 minutes northwest of me, and my son lived 45 minutes southwest of me. And my daughter was going to my son's house, and his wife was taking my daughter to a whole nother city about an hour away to get her driver's license changed to her married name because COVID happened and she couldn't do it. And so that day, the car overheated. They called my husband. My husband said, just turn around and come home. And this is all God, because my daughter's family is a one car family. So she dropped her husband off at work, went down to my daughter-in-law's, hopped in my daughter-in-law's vehicle. They were driving. It overheated. They came back, and my daughter wound up here at my home. We went and had lunch, ran some errands, had some amazing conversation, but something in my gut didn't feel right that day. And she was getting ready to leave. She went to the restroom. She was about to leave to go get her husband. And my husband's phone rang. A matter of fact, he was sitting in that chair right there. And I had laid down in the bedroom because, like I said, something just didn't feel right. And it was my daughter in law's ringtone. So my husband answered it and he was like, "What's wrong? What's going on? What do you need?" We always answered the phone with her, "Everything good?" And it was her father. And he said, "No, there's been an accident." And I don't remember a lot of the conversation. What I'm relaying to you is things that have been told to me, because everything is like some things have come back, but it's a blur. And so he was told that Austin did not make it, and he went into the bedroom and told me that Austin had passed, and he used other words that I still can't put to use. He used the D word, and I proceeded to drop to the floor. I don't even know anything after that. I do remember getting myself together, calling our youngest son, um, who was not speaking to Austin at the time due to a female, and telling him, and he came, and we went to the police department. And I didn't believe the phone call. I needed to hear it from authorities. And of course, they gave me the information. And so, because of the community that I had, being in Celebrate Recovery, being involved in the church literally 5, 6 days a week, um, having the kids grow up in this community, I made one phone call, which turned into people calling everybody. And when we got back from the police department, we had over 40 people in our front yard.
wow.
I
That
mean,
is an impressive support system.
it was just a full embrace. I call her my sister. She's my spiritual sister. while we were going to the police department. She was actually moving from Alabama to Tennessee. She was in a U-Haul truck. And she dumped her stuff at her new house, drove back to Alabama, dropped her dog off, and got on a flight and was here within 48 hours. And I will honestly say, if it wasn't for her, I don't know where I would be today. Um, he was driving home. He got off work early, which is uncommon, but we went to the employer and they said, yeah, he ran everything and he was just gonna go home. And he was on a country road halfway home where for whatever reason there was a big rig that either cut him off or was toying with him and he wanted to pass the big rig. And he started to do so, but then it wound up being a no passing zone and a blind hill. And he wound
Mm.
up clipping the front end of a um, SUV. And with that, um, they said he passed on impact. I don't, for me, I still question that almost 3 years in. But that's not for me to know. That's God's, God's will. Um, I just struggled and I had to lean into God and I was at my highest point in my faith. God, I don't know why you're doing this. Pull me through. Give me the strength that I need. I mean, clearly we've had conversations and, I'm not I can't do it without you. And 2 days later, we're getting ready for his celebration of life. His biological father was coming in unbeknownst to us. He didn't wait for any details. So I felt like I needed closure. I felt like I needed to provide closure to him. And we put a celebration of life together. And while doing so, Austin's elementary school best friend showed me a TikTok. And I'm on Austin's TikTok. But for whatever reason, I've never seen this video. My family's favorite number is 7. Austin's was 13. And that's very important in this. Um, he posted a video on July 7, 13, 2020 during COVID. And he's looking at the rays at a bus stop. He drove the city buses and he's looking at the rays coming out of the clouds. And he says, "Man, that looks like one awesome party in heaven." And there's this really sweet pause. And he says, "To be honest with you, I can't wait to get there." And then a childlike giggle. And I will tell you, for any doubt that I had, any anger that I had, any negative emotion in my body went out the window when I heard that. Clearly I was distraught and crying, and but he's very well known for that video. It had over 195 views at the time, 95,000 views at the time. It has well over 203,000 K views now. Um it's what brings me hope, knowing that he knew where he was going. So, through all of this, processing and working on my childhood trauma, I was placed perfectly where I needed to be to process this grief very early on. I will not tell you that I accept it, but I acknowledge the grief, and that's all God. And because I can acknowledge it so early on, because of that video that brought me hope, I did my grief work. And in the midst of doing my grief work, I started Austin Sunshine Foundation for our local county and surrounding areas that parents that lose young adults 18 to 26. We will support them, whether that looks like finding resources for mental health, helping pay bills, just sitting with you in silence. I've been to other people's children's funerals and I don't even know who they are, just to show that they're not alone. I want them to know that they're seen, loved, and heard, because when you start to walk this, you don't feel that, especially if you don't have faith in God. And we tend to lose our faith or have emotions that prevent us from believing and trusting in Him in these moments. And we do memorial signs. I mean, we've done it all, purchased holiday meals because they couldn't afford it. And while doing that, I poured out so much that I felt a little empty in my cup. So I went to social media looking for groups to have a positive outlook in my grief. And all I was finding were people in their grief saying, "This doesn't get better. Life is never going to be the same, which, okay, they're absolutely right. Life is never going to be the same. But we can walk along the side of grief and still live a life honoring them. This child right here, if I sat in my bed and I did nothing or I didn't leave my home, would be so disappointed in me. And I know that because I knew my child. And so I choose to get up every day and have a purpose. And that's to get up and live. Some days I
I
don't
think
want to.
Well, I think that's what's hard for a lot of people, honestly. I've been in the lost parent community for 3 years now, and I
Mhm.
think that's the hardest part is when you, I mean, I lost a
Right.
stillborn, and you lost your son at a grown age, and I always tell people don't compare losses of any kind
Mhm.
because what I've come to find in the lost community is I don't care how old your child was when they passed, it hurts, and it hurts all the time. It doesn't go away, and
Absolutely.
sometimes it feels like a punishment. It feels
Yeah.
like what my life be like if they were still here. Or I have regrets because I didn't get to do X with them. And
Yep.
so, like you said, I think there's a big part that grief, you have to figure out how to move forward with it. And I think that's where us as
Absolutely.
lost parents, we hear all those common things that life happens or you're going to be
Hmm.
over it at some point. The truth is,
They're
when
in
you
a
lose a
better
child, you
place,
never
or
will.
yeah. Yeah.
You never will. And that's
Yeah. No.
that's the reality of losing a child. So
Yep.
I'm glad you hold space for people like that because
Absolutely.
um
Well, and
it's
that's what made me create Fingerprints of Grief, which is a Zoom community. I average about 25 families, parents, every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We communicate about what's working for us, what's not working, how we're feeling that day. Um, I'll do a lesson on grief because a lot of people don't realize anything about grief affects your entire life, your body, your neurological system, your nervous system, your communication skills. The list goes on and on. And so, what I do is I present a brief lesson with interactive questions so that people get other people's perspectives on their grief and how they're handling it, how they're not handling it. And it's just been a beautiful creation. I've been doing it for almost 15 months. And I have some people that are still there from day one that are my biggest supporters. And man, it's just like a family. I am a true advocate of who you see here, what is said here stays here. So I have created a safe space for these parents to come in. And if we get to a point to where, there's a parent that's just devastated that day and we just focus on them and feed them the positivity that they need, that's what we do. But the point is it's like-minded people getting together to fill each other's cup and love you exactly where you're at. And that is so important in our grief.
I think that's a big important step in our grief. I went to a lost parent event with people that lost children, and
Mhm.
I can share that those families that do lose a child, there's so much love, there's so much empathy. And the biggest thing that I love about the lost community, and I say we're part of a club we shouldn't be part of, but I'll
Right.
say there is so much kindness and there's no judgment in those people at all. It doesn't
Hmm.
exist. It's really I can understand how you feel. I get
Hmm.
where you're at. You're where you
And
need to be
even if
right
I
now.
don't understand how you feel because your circumstances may be different, I understand the pain of the loss. And that's huge.
Yeah.
We wind up losing our community prior, the community we had prior to the passing. And we have to build our own community and support system after the passing. And so that's what I've chosen to do. I then became a master life coach and grief coach. Matter of fact, we kind of gone to the same school. I noticed your little emblems and I was like, hey. So I've been doing that for about a year now, year and a half. And I rebranded and I named it the Lighthouse Healing. And there's a whole story behind that. It's really beautiful, God led. Lighthouse Healing is totally about transformation because let's be real, we don't heal from a child loss, but we transform. Our final
Yeah.
healing is going to be when we see our child again. And
Well, I think
so,
that's what's powerful, by the way, Paula. Your
mhm,
son, Austin, he gave you that transformation. He gave you a gift. I share that on my podcast all the time that my
yeah,
son Caden wasn't a tragic loss. biggest beautiful gift I ever got. And that's what I
I'm not
see
the
from
same
you.
person. I'm
I
not the
s-
same person that I was on August 12th of 2022. I am
yeah,
totally different, and I have more grace, I have more empathy, compassion, you know. I'm
Austin
just
gave you
different.
those things.
Yeah.
That's why I try to tell people, we when we're in the lost community of parents and we lost our child, we're doing life in reverse. We're supposed to
Mhm.
die first, not our kids. And
Yeah.
that went reverse. We also, by the way, lost a future we wanted and something
Yeah.
we saw to come. We lost that too. And
Yeah.
so we have to look at this as our children gave us a gift, and that's what's powerful about your story about Austin. He gave you, and you shared with me a lot of signs that he gave you, by
I
the
was
way.
just about to share
And
those. I was just about
yeah,
to.
I want to lead you into that
Yeah.
because, your Austin gave you so many gifts, and he keeps on giving you gifts. And that's what happens with my son too. He keeps giving me gifts all the time. So I want to give you an opening for that
Yeah,
to share some of
absolutely.
those gifts that Austin's given you.
So being a Christ follower, a lot of people don't believe in signs. They think once they're gone to heaven and we'll see him again. I don't. I don't think it's woohoo. I don't think it's anything. I think it's a science. And his spirit still lives on while his body is not here. And when I don't feel his presence or I'm feeling really off, I do. I talk to him. Austin, I'm not feeling you today. I need you to, show me you're still here with me. I get Blue Jays and Cardinals all the time. I never got those before. The first week he was gone for the first like 13 days. I live in a suburb of Fort Worth. We don't have Blue Jays that just fly around everywhere, right? We have regular doves and things like that. In our community, we didn't have blue jays. And for 13 days straight, there was a blue jay feather, one every day for 13 days. His favorite number was 13. That's
I
not a
remember you saying
coincidence.
that.
It's not a coincidence. Um, my most recent one, I'm going to leave the powerful one for last. My most recent one was I was at his memorial. I put a cross on the side of the road where he passed. Um, he has some ashes there. His father chose to leave some there. Um, but I decorate it every month for a holiday or just to have so people know, hey, there's awareness, this happened. And people always comment on it and say how beautiful it is. And I was just feeling so off for quite a long time. And while my husband mows the property, the adopt a road sign should be put up this week or next week. Super excited. Um, we adopted that road. And unofficially,
Mm.
we adopted that road, and then we officially got that. And while in the process of all of that, my husband takes his mower and mows about a quarter of a mile of the property that he's on.
Oh, wow. That's
By
a lot of
by
road.
push mow, by push mow, he weed whacks, he blows. I mean, he takes pride in how our son's memorial looks. And so while he was doing all of that and I finished taking down the decorations and putting the new ones up, I was talking to Austin. I said, I'm feeling off, buddy. I haven't felt you in a while and I need a sign. That day was really windy and I wasn't expecting it. I got up. I went to go see if my husband needed me to help him pick up trash or anything. And as soon as I got up and walked out of I have a little gated fence area around the cross. I got up, walked out of it, and I went to walk to my husband. And I kid you not, something caught my eye at the bottom left of my foot. And I'm this far from a fence, so I'm not very far from walking along the fence. There was a mockingbird. And
Mm.
if you know mockingbirds, they're very skittish. The moment they hear or feel vibration, they're gone.
Yep.
This little guy was not. This little guy stood next to me. This little guy hopped in the little fence. I took pictures of it. I mean, I took pictures of every process. And I'd say, "Okay, is that you?" I said, "If it's you, I need you to go over to the cross." And I thought his wing was broken because he should have flew away. I was too close to him multiple times while having a conversation. And he walked over to the cross. He walked around the cross. He walked through the gated area. I have a picture of him right outside the gate. And I stopped my husband and I said, "You need to come see this." And I didn't want to feel crazy. And he showed, I showed him. I said, "I think his wing is broken." He says, "Well, there's nothing that we can do. We don't have anything to put him in." And so he went about his business. And I'm talking to this bird like it's my son. And I'm like, "Buddy, I can't pick you up. I'm going to need you to go to a safe place and rest you know, but thank you for showing up." And my husband comes, he's gone. He goes underneath the little cattle fence into the private property. And my husband says, "Okay, I'm done. Where's the bird?" And I was like, "Oh, it went under the cattle fence. I'm not going to go on private property to go find it." And he goes, "Okay, well, are you ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I turn around and I said, my husband's like, "What?" And of course, we're in the country, so he's thinking a snake, right? No, the bird was at my tire on the passenger side.
Uh,
And I was like, "Oh my God." And I was like, "Okay, Austin, if this is you, I need you to go up to the hill and at least go by your cross." And it hopped up the hill by the cross. It didn't go in the cross, but it went by the fencing. And then it hopped into this mesquite tree. And the wind is just, I mean, fiercely blowing. We're in a little divot of a hill. Like we're at the crevice of it. And the wind is just fearful, and I'm watching this bird just swaying on this limb that's barely holding him up. And I'm like having conversation with them, telling them, "I miss you. Um, this is insane. I'm so glad that you showed up today. You blow my mind." And my husband says, "Okay, are you ready to go?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, buddy, well, be careful." And I go to turn my back, and the bird flies across the street to the tree exactly where the impact happened and landed in the tree.
yeah, that's not coincidence.
And I was like, "Did you see that?" And Brian's like, "Yeah." So we get in the truck, and in high school, my son's favorite artist was Eminem. And my husband's looking down at his phone looking for an address. The radio is not on, like it's on, but the volume isn't on. And I look up and it says Eminem, "Lose Yourself," which was one of his favorite songs. And I said, "Babe, look at the radio." And I turned it up. And we just started weeping. We were like, "Okay, Austin, we see you." And we always acknowledge when there's a sign. That's just one of many. But my most powerful one is Austin had three best friends that wound up getting married within a 6-month time frame. The
Hmm.
first one, I was okay going to. I kind of was hesitant, but I was okay going to it. Austin showed up as a butterfly, and he twirled
Hmm.
around the couple as they were saying their vows. He had sat on a chair next to me. We had his daughter that weekend. And the second one, I did not want to go to this wedding at all. And it was nothing in regards to the couple, but there was a resistance. Like even that day, I didn't even know what I was going to wear. And we drive out there, and it's in the boondocks. It's way in the country. And we get there. I'm fine during the ceremony. Right before the ceremony, a butterfly comes flying around people. Huge butterfly. I mean, it was big. And I just kind of chuckled. And I made it through the ceremony without crying. My husband is bawling his eyes out. And they do their final kiss, and the butterfly is wrapping around them and then takes off. And I just laughed. And so we're waiting on the reception. We're talking to some people. The reception starts. Everything's great. Still feeling off. Took a couple of pictures with the wedding party, and it was in that moment that I took a selfie with the wedding party that I realized why I didn't want to be there. And it was because my son created a car club in high school. And every single one of those guys that walked life with him was in that picture. The only person missing was my son. And it still gets me till this day. And so we're sitting there and the music starts playing, and it's a song. I can't remember what song it was. And I just kind of chuckled and turned around, and there was one person on the dance floor. And then the music all of a sudden got louder out of nowhere. Like it was extremely obnoxiously loud. And I turned back around, and there's a second figure on the dance floor. And I look at my husband and I said, "Who is that?" And he says, "Who's who?" And he goes, "It's the same person that was on the dance floor before." And he gave their name. I said, "No, the person next to him." He goes, "Paula, there's no one there." I was like, "Okay, I'm done. I'm out." I didn't say goodbye to anybody. I went to the truck. My husband already knew we had conversation. Like I didn't really have to say I'm done. I didn't like in my mind I'm telling myself I'm done. I just gave eye contact to him and I walked to the truck and I literally lost it because I didn't feel my son's presence. So whoever that was on the dance floor that I was seeing and nobody else was that really Austin? I don't know. So I'm having my meltdown. My husband says, "Are you going to be okay?" And I'm like, "Just no, like this isn't fair. He should be here." And I'm having my moment and I stop and I breathe and I say, "Okay, Austin." And I don't say it out loud. So my husband has no idea what I've said. I said, "Austin, if you are with me today, I need 3 deer going home." There's no significance in the number 3. It was random. I didn't say how I wanted it to be shown to me. I just specifically said 3 deer. 12 minutes into the um, ride. Now, mind you, if you think about it, yes, you're in the country and yes, you should see deer, but it has to be a specific like time frame that they come out, right?
Hmm.
It has to be dusk. We weren't at dusk yet. We were getting there, but we weren't there yet. And about 12 minutes in, mind you, he passed on August 12th. My husband slams on his brakes and hits reverse and says, "Look out my window right towards the tree line." Right before the tree line, there's some open space with a tree. And I said, "Okay." He says, "Do you see it?" And there was a doe, a deer,
Mm,
a female deer right there. And I just smiled. My husband knows I'm a very big person into science. He knows I love nature. So the fact that he stopped to show me that was amazing. So we're another 12 minutes in, and we're talking about rather than going home, we're going to go to my daughter's house. And here comes this buck from my side of the road. Had my husband going been going 5 miles faster an hour, we would have hit it. It came out from the side of the road, crossed in front of us, and went and kept going on Brian's side. And
that's beautiful. I
I'm
love
just shaking
that.
my head like I did. I shook my head like, no, like this isn't happening. And I have a smile on my face. And my husband's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Nothing. He was beautiful." And we are less than a quarter of a mile. Now it's dark. Okay. I mean, it's dark. We're less than a quarter of a mile from my daughter's house, and there's this S shaped curve. And we're coming into the first curve of the S, and my husband slams on his brakes because a 12-point buck came from his side of the road, galloping across. Well, I won't even say galloping, gliding across the road, leapt over this fence and into a dark field. And I just started laughing. And he said, "What is that about?" And I said, "Well, I didn't want to say anything." He says, "Okay, well, say something." And I said, "Well, back there at the wedding venue before we took off, I asked Austin for 3 deer if he was with me." I said, "And I got 3 deer." And he was
That's
like,
beautiful.
he's like, "Can you be careful what you ask for?" You know, because clearly, 3 deer crossing in front of you can be dangerous. But and he'll always ask me if we're going to the country, "Did you ask Austin for any deer today? Do I need to be on the lookout?" So now it's a family joke. But if you allow yourself to be open, your heart, your mind, and your eyes be open, you will find signs of your child, especially if you're asking them. And some people will say, well, I don't think that's true. Well, if anything, it's a sign of hope.
You know, Paula, I can tell you asking for signs is a real thing. Like my son's thing is a lion, and I don't know why, but I never ask for it. But if I walk into a store sometimes, I'll see one lion in an entire store, just one, not
Mm-hmm.
many of them. And I
Mm-hmm.
do believe that those signs are there because I don't believe when
Absolutely.
we leave this world that that's the end. I don't think it is.
I
I
don't
think it's
either.
a transition to something better than where we're at today. This was just our learning journey through this
Right.
planet.
Yeah,
But our loved ones that pass on, they show us signs. They always do. And so
absolutely.
if you're paying attention, by the way, my grandfather always had a saying, if you keep your eyes open, your ears listen, you'll never be surprised what comes across. So when you slow down to see those things like you did and ask those questions like you did, your Austin shows up. He always does.
Absolutely.
And he's that
Absolutely.
child, by the way, that's not like everybody else. He's an underdog. He rides his own course.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's what I love about him. When he told
Yeah.
me his story the first time.
Yeah.
Um, well, I want to say thank you so much for being a guest today on
Mhm.
this podcast. I had lots of questions, so I'm going to bring you back on a second episode
Okay.
to do that. But I really just appreciate you sharing his story. It's very, very powerful. It's very moving. But I also think that you share with a lot of people the true testament of faith and how you can walk this journey with God because
Absolutely.
you don't have to walk grief alone. You don't have to. And if anybody can't be there for you and you feel isolated, God is always there with you. He never left you.
Absolutely. No.
Um, I wanted to ask you really quickly, Paula, because I have two questions when I wrap up the podcast. One
Okay.
of them is if you meet somebody going through grief right now or somebody who feels stuck in grief, what's one
Mhm.
thing that you would share with them to help them navigate that journey just a little easier?
Be patient with yourself. Every step, even if it's a tiptoe, is a step forward. Be willing to take that step, even though it feels scary. You're not leaving your child or your loved one because let's be real, grief is heavy all around. Um, you're not leaving them behind because you're working on your pain. You're taking them with you every step of the way, especially when you say their name and share their story. Don't be shameful to do so. It is a healing process, a transformation, because at the end of the day, the healing comes when you meet with them again. And that's just going to take some time. Your feelings are valid. You are seen, you are loved, and you are heard. And I think that is very important that everybody know that.
That's a beautiful message, Paula. I'm gonna have to clip that out of this podcast so people can really listen to that because I think people in the throes of grief oftentimes don't hear that message or get that support from people around them. So what you just said was very beautiful. And if you are going through grief right now, listening to this episode, rewind and replay that for yourself when you're having a hard time in grief. That's
Absolutely.
a big thing that will help give you some peace and some grounding as you go through the healing process.
I think it's
Um,
very important that people know that just because you're not hurting or you're working on your grief doesn't mean that you're leaving them behind because a lot of the times that's how we get stuck is we don't want to leave them behind. We don't want to forget them. And so we sit in that pain. The important thing to know is that as long as you say their name and you tell their story and you look at pictures, you're keeping them alive in a spiritual sense. And you will never forget. They're still with you.
That's exactly right. And I always share that with people that society has us in this mindset of moving on and letting go and forgetting things. And that's really not how grief works at all. We can't consciously fix grief. That's a matter of the
Mhm,
heart. And so
mhm.
I try to share with people that you're never going to get over it. The only way through grief, by the way, is moving forward with it or moving through it. Those are the ways you can do it. And those
And
ways,
even
by the
if
way,
they're
don't mean you're
tiptoes.
forgetting somebody either. It doesn't mean you're letting go of things. It means that grief is a part of you. So accept it as part of you and allow that piece to
Absolutely.
let you move forward because grief will give you a powerful new chapter of things. And that's exactly what
Mhm.
Austin gave you, by the way. It gave you a big, beautiful gift.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Well, where can people find you, Paula, if they want to connect with you after
So I
today's
am on
episode?
I am on TikTok right now under Austin Sunshine. I do go live at least 2 to 3 times a week. You can find the Lighthouse Healing on Facebook, and Austin Sunshine Foundation is also on Facebook. Or you can email me at info at Austin, AUSTINS, sunshine, SUNSHINE.org.
Well, for listeners that are listening to this podcast today, I'm going to have Paula's links in the show notes. So when you guys get done listening to the episode, just scroll down and you guys will find those in the show notes. I definitely recommend connecting with her, especially if you guys have lost a child, by the way, connect with Paula. Like I said, that's a part of a club that none of us want to be part of. But I tell you right now, it's the one club you will find everything but judgment. You'll find love, you'll find compassion, you'll find empathy, you'll find understanding, and the most important one, you will find people that will hold space and just get you. And I will tell you right now, that's the biggest thing when you lost a child is those attributes. So Paula, thanks again for being a guest today on today's episode.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to our next session.
And I want to thank listeners for joining Paula and I today on this episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody you know who could benefit from Paula's story. For more episodes that are designed to empower you and support you during your grief journey, visit empowergriefjourney.com and subscribe to this podcast. You can also find us on Apple and Spotify. The Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. I want you guys to know you're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.